Welcome to the Big Mike Fun Podcast, where you learn about advanced wealth building strategies from real estate investing to creating massive ROI and secured retirement profits. So pour yourself a cup of coffee, grab a notepad, and lean in. Because Big Mike has got the mic, starting now.
Welcome to the Big Mike Fun Podcast. I'm the Big Mike Zlatnik. Today it is my distinct pleasure and a privilege to welcome back my good friend, close colleague, brother from the Collective Genius Mastermind, Cory Boatright. Hi, Cory.
Hey, brother. What's going on, Mike?
Well, we're living in a very turbulent world now. It's a crazy world. Never thought this would come. But we are living in the days of this coronavirus pandemic. And it's certainly a challenging time. So what are your thoughts, just, to get going? What are your thoughts on where we're going, where the world is going? Are we going to be okay? Is this going to be worse than we think? Or is it going to be better than we think?
I think you have three different buckets of people that, and you have to decide where you are on that spectrum. You have folks that are climbing in the cave. They're getting their ammo up. They're militia-minded. The government's out to get them. We don't know what's going to happen. We're bunkering down. Then you got people on the fence that don't really know either way, one way or the other. They're kind of leaning towards conspiracy. They're kind of leaning towards, this is going to be an okay market. And then you got these other group, smaller percentage, but very optimistic, excited, have been waiting for something like what was considered a black swan event. We already had a bull market for a long time. We had a market that was just continuing to run, and we all knew that it was bloated. We all knew the stock market was bloated. And I think when Trump came into office, it was 18 or 19, and then it jumped all the way up to 20s and 20s. And so we knew it was bloated, knew something had to happen. I don't think any of us could prepare for coronavirus and really the impact, but virtually from humanity-wise and from business-wise, of what is going to happen from that. However, my mentor told me a long time ago that whenever you have a headache, it sucks for you, but fantastic for Tylenol. And I know, speaking to you, Mike, because you and I have known each other for a very long time, done a lot of business together. You being in that transactional funding world, I being in that short sale world, we know a lot about from the 2008 crash, that you can be Tylenol to the market. However, as of where we are right now, I think it's really difficult to get a grip on what's going to happen next week. The knife is still falling, and trying to grab a falling knife, we all know what happens. We get cut up, and the question is, when is it going to hit the ground? And there's a lot of opportunity that I see coming because I'm an optimist. But I also think that to be wise and have wise counsel that we have with our community of Collective Genius and the mastermind for even our good friends, David Phelps and Freedom Founders, which you're a part of as well, having wise community and being able to not just rely on what you see on your data, but taking data in from other markets and other things that we're seeing is going to give us an advantage. It's going to give us a way to look over some of the fear and chaos and really see how can we lead and not panic. David Phelps said that, and I love it. How do we lead through this time and not panic? If you have an organization and you have people that rely on you and they are looking for your leadership right now, and it's easy to put your head in the sand, and it's easy to say, woe is me, and just be paralyzed by the fear of the unknown, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of change. However, this thing right up here, your mindset, is either going to be your biggest advantage or it's going to be your disadvantage. It's going to give you clarity and a way to walk through the storm, or it's also going to play games on you. And I call it the hammer. Whenever you have whenever you're entrepreneurs, they have two voices in their head. When they decide to be an entrepreneur, they invited another voice, and it's called the hammer. And that hammer is constantly beating up on you and telling you all the bad things, and constantly just saying that be fearful and scared. But I think that you have to quiet the hammer. You have to my mentor said, put the hammer down. I never knew what he meant until he told me the story. Put the hammer down. And I said, what hammer? He said, the one you keep beating the crap out of yourself with. Quit beating yourself up so much. Quit having so much fear, and really decide how you can lead in the midst of the storm.
So great thoughts, Cory. So I agree with you. So how do we lead? Let's talk a little bit about that, because the things we can control and things we cannot control. And part of what leaders do, they decide and focus on things that what they can control. Obviously, in this volatile and uncertain day, leaders have to provide confidence, and they have to communicate with their teams. And it's all stakeholders. It's the employees, the customers, the investors, the clients, the partners, the associates. And I agree with you. We need to do a great job leading and showing there is a light in the tunnel, and certainly maintain healthy and optimistic mindset. So let's talk, I guess, what are your thoughts on leadership? So what things should we be doing now from a practical standpoint? Obviously, health, we gotta wash the hands and stay away. I mean, we're here in New York, we're bunkered out. There is an order, shelter in place.
Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Sanitizers. Have them sanitizers much as you possibly can right now. It's a good practice.
I got plenty of sanitizers. If I run out, I have about 5 bottles of vodka. It'll take care of that.
That's right. That's the Russian vodka.
Sanitizer. It'll work too.
Big Russian sanitizer.
Big Russian sanitizer. Yes. But what do you think? What other things that we should do as leaders during these difficult times?
One thing I immediately did when it was like Wednesday of last week, when we were at CG, NCAA canceled, and it really took it to another level for me on what was getting ready to come. And so I immediately contacted our team, and I said, listen, there's going to be some turmoil that comes. There's going to be a storm that's coming. There's going to be a lot of fear and anxiousness. And I just want you to know that we're going to get through this together. I don't have all the answers, but we're going to get through this. And I feel very confident, not just of myself and my own abilities and experiences that I can rely on, but I feel very confident with my wise counsel and the people that I know in my community that can also give me, just being wise and giving me some strategies. And so some practical things that you can do with your organization is you need to over communicate right now. If you think that talking to them one time a day is enough, it's not. You need to over communicate with your folks. You need to let them know that you're thinking things through, that you're coming up with new strategies, that things aren't just hitting you and you're being reactive to them. You're being proactive. You also want to ask how they're doing. Are they okay? Is there anything that they need right now? What's on their mind? Is there anything that's holding them back from doing their job? Is there anything that is on their mind that is conflicting where they're losing focus right now? And I think it's easy to say that the COVID-19 is one of those things, but you never know where your people are unless you ask them. And if you're not good at that, you need to make sure you are someone in your company is overly communicating with them. You also need to over communicate with your team. 2, over communicate with your service providers. You need to contact your service providers. You need to look at your P&L. You need to look at where your expenses are, and you need to really define if the same type of payments that have been made over the last year are going to continue to be made, or they're going to be potential disruption. And if there's going to be a potential disruption, or even if you don't see it now and you think it's coming, it's right now is the time to have a conversation and say, listen, I'm letting you know that it looks right now that there could be a potential disruption. I don't know what the disruption is going to be, but it looks like you and I are going to have a conversation in the next week or two. I don't know what the conversation is going to look like right now, but I appreciate working with you. I hope that my track record of working with you has been strong. I want to continue working with you. And this is especially true with your local banks. I think a bigger bank, like big institutions might not be obviously, but if you have a relationship with your local banks, right now is the time to communicate with your banker. The other thing is to communicate with, depending on, this is all relative, of course, Mike, but looking at what those expenses are and who you're making those payments to. If you're working with a private investor, if you're working with different folks that have, all of this has been affected by, it's time to have that conversation. It's also good to look at any credit lines and availability that you have to cash. Let's just cut right to it. Cash pays the bills and it also feeds your family. As of right now, that's the way it is. So you need to think strategically if there's things that are coming up that you think is going to potentially, hurt you and not be able to take care of your family. Now, most of the people watching this and hearing this are probably okay. They've put away some reserves. They've been pretty wise on that, but there might be some that have not. And there's a big concern. I'll give you an example. You can still be a smart person and even have reserves, but still have a big concern coming up. I talked to a guy this morning, $100,000 a month evaporated because the businesses that he's working with, who's dependent on that money coming in on triple net leases, is gone. It's gone right now. Okay. So I don't know about you, if $100,000 a month affects you, maybe it doesn't, but it did to him. And so it's something that we all are being affected by in some way, shape, or form. And you need to be thinking about this. Any way that you can get capital right now, cash, credit lines, anything that you can with SBA. SBA is putting out different opportunities now. It may be a little late for you to tap into it, but if you have it open and you haven't tapped into it, I'm going to encourage you to tap into it right now and utilize it right now. Now, you may not need it. You may think, well, it's a 12% interest loan, or it's a high interest. Well, think about this. You're looking at that on an APR basis. Really, it's only about 1% a month. And let's hope that this thing ends a lot faster, but it would be better for you to pay the 1% a month than to run out of cash. So just be wise on how you're thinking through this process right now. And that's leading through the turbulent storm. The other thing is make sure that you're limiting who you're getting advice from. Right now, and I'm guilty of this too, I have a lot of folks that I really care a lot about, and they're passionate when they have a friend of them that gets a message and it says that we're having national quarantine and all this other thing. You're hearing all kinds of messages right now. Tom Hanks is getting arrested, but now it's really a covert operation. However far you want to go, just be careful on who you're getting information from, because if you're not getting it from a reliable source, a trustworthy, reliable source, and it's not been fact-checked, and listen, we're all guilty of getting something that we thought was reliable and not being fact-checked, but be extra careful on it right now because people's fear is at an all-time high. And how you're affecting and how you're talking to people and how they're talking to you raises your level of anxiety, raises your level of fear, and oftentimes it's not the way that you think it is. So just make sure that you're fact-checking, make sure you're limiting on who you're getting information from.
Cory, thanks. Great thoughts. I'm just going to summarize a few of these very key points. So number one, cutting costs you mentioned, right? It's a key consideration going forward. So whatever business people are in, the top line may suffer. In some cases, might suffer catastrophically or very substantially. So the only way to deal with these type of stress situations is to cut costs. Two, as you mentioned, who can you defer payments to, right? Talk to your vendors and you can explain, listen, this is people who you can defer payments to and they'll still stick around just as long as it's a good conversation. Three, raise cash every way. Like you mentioned, lines is a great way to get liquidity if the banks are still giving you the money. Two, I think there's now a number of SBA emergency loans. I think they're at actually 0% if you qualify. If you're in an emergency zone, probably half the country at this point in a declared emergency. So, and obviously communications, and for sure information. Jason Medley mentioned, let's not be listening to the news. Let's be making news, right?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
It's a key consideration at this point. The TV can be dangerous, and the news channels could be dangerous to just hear the bad news. At this point, we should all be thinking about what we can do to make the difference, to prepare. So I like to call it observing, analyzing, and preparing, because those three things is something that you're controlling them, and it's your mind. But the markets are very fluid now. I want to switch a little bit and sort of talk a little bit about assets and the opportunities, and we certainly need to wait now. So one observation, I had a call today about $100 million deal, and the deal is off. We were supposed to participate in the deal. The lead investor took his serious position and said, I'm not closing, I need the cash. So that's the challenge in this environment. There's going to be all kinds of repricing of all the deals. So the deal pricing a month ago is not the same as it is now. It's not the same as going to be a month from now. So the price is uncertain, the values are uncertain. They're probably going to reset down, right? From a cash perspective, this particular investor had a lot of hospitality investments, right? And they are freaking out because the cash flow from those went, just like you mentioned, from whatever it is, $100,000 a month. That guy was probably more than $100,000 a month, way more than that, to zero overnight. So whatever other money is available, he wants to preserve it, not to put it in another deal. Who knows what's going to happen with pricing anyway. So what do you think is going to happen? Commercial deals. You invest in multifamily, right? So let's just switch to talk a little bit about this. I see significant repricing happening a number of months from now. This is a prolonged situation. Hopefully we'll get the health issues resolved. We'll reopen the doors and people will go back to work. But for the time being, this is it's beyond, it's a black swan. It's a combination of 2008 with 9/11, right? It could become a Great Depression, right? I mean, like we called it Great Recession. This could be a Great Depression.
I think they mentioned over 300,000 jobs that are lost so far, and it potentially could be 1 million.
Could be multiple millions by some estimates. Now we don't want to scare people. All we're trying to say is, if you're about to do any deal or you're thinking to do deals, if the deals have safety of the future cash flow, one of the reasons that the repricing will happen is the future cash flows are uncertain. So whatever was, if you're looking at the trailing 12 or trailing 3, they're irrelevant. If this thing resets, right?
That's right.
If this thing resets and the cash flows, if the commercial property was leasing to businesses in the brick and mortar, and they're closed, there are no cash flows. And until this thing resets and restabilizes, some businesses will be out of business, the rents may be reduced, and we might wind up in a position where things are going to be 30-40% off, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So my 2 cents, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, is you have to be patient right now. I mean, just sit and wait, and wash the hands, try to be smart about it, take care of the family. But as far as real estate, we'll have assets. We just have to wait. And some people say, well, let's jump in the stock market. Okay, good luck with that if you know what you're doing. But at this point, it's could be a further bloodbath on the streets. And hopefully things will stabilize. At some point they will. We just don't know when. And how severe it's going to be. Right?
I agree. Yeah, I think you're right on point. Trying to catch a falling knife, you get cut a lot. The question is how deep, how long? And no one really knows that. From most of the investors that I've been talking to, the sentiment is that, we're thinking it could be a pop back on what we call a V recession. So slingshot back because essentially, you know, housing was pretty strong, and not like the 2008 where, you know, where the banks are strong too. So I think with the government, you know, and stimulus plan and bailing out the airlines, and they have a significant amount of money for small businesses too. There'll be a lot of incentives, things that will help. But no doubt about it, people are hurting in this country right now in a big way. People are losing their jobs, and it affects everybody. And on your business now, if you're looking at your ARBs the same way, I think it's a mistake. I think that the value is going to significantly change, in my opinion. And you have to be cognizant of that, be aware of that. Doesn't mean that you stop doing business. I think if you have a property that you bought and you have a buyer in the end, you should close on the transaction if all possible. But I do think you have to be wary on, I'll tell you right now, we're slowing down on any kind of acquisitions for the next 60 days on the multifamily side. We're looking in a very big way to just get data, at least 30 days data, but 60 days data would be better to really see what opportunities there is, what we're seeing out there for multifamily. I can tell you that there are a number of folks that I know that deals are not closing and deals are blowing up at the closing table, or extensions are being offered on these properties now, and owners are willing to allow it because they don't want to lose the buyer. So if you have an opportunity now, I would extend, if very minimum, I would extend to close on a big multifamily, multi-million-dollar projects. I would definitely extend if all possible. If there's going to be other opportunities that come up from this, and on the single family side, I'll give you a practical example. I'm talking to one of my clients this morning from Dallas, and they were on the MLS, and we were looking at in the last 7 days and as of today, how many properties have been reduced. The properties have been reduced. And in the last 7 days in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, it was over 2,100 properties have reduced their pricing. Right. So what does this tell you? This tells you, and I asked them, what is it normally? And she said, this is over 50% of what it normally she sees. So at least we can see a 50% raise in people's fear and everything else. This is becoming a very big reality to people. They're kind of waking up to it in a way. They're like, this is happening. And because of that, it's affecting everyone. It's affecting the market. And you're on single families right now, you're going to see, I believe, people willing to take less money on their properties, because they're uncertain. Now, does that mean you're not supposed to perform when you said you're going to? I absolutely not saying that. I do think it's for you to make a decision of your marketplace has changed. And if you don't think it has, I think that's a mistake. I think you have to realize when Bank of America, which has much smarter counsel than probably Mike and I and analysts on, whenever they send out a message to everyone publicly, it says, we believe we're in a recession. Whenever Goldman Sachs says to their investors, this is a real deal, this is going to affect everybody, it's something that you should at least pay attention to. And in a recession, your market changes. We all know that. So adjust your ARBs and really be thinking a little bit more conservative.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I agree with you 100%. It's just the fact that we will come out of it. It's a wheel speeding at 90 miles an hour, and somebody jammed in a wrench into the wheel and literally stopped it. So that's the effect. Right. And under normal circumstances, right, you see this coming. You just cannot see it. I mean, you and I'm not trying to take any credit at all. This is something that I don't want to be. Well, we were chatting earlier, thinking this was going to be a black swan. I mean, a while back when data was beginning to come in, and I mean, there's no benefit to anybody that we saw it earlier. It's the point is still the same. This is sudden, and it'll reset the economy and the cash flows, the prices, the values, the employment, everything is going to be instantly reset at some point when it restabilizes. But until it stabilizes, we're also dealing with a massive health risk and issue. So I don't know, you obviously follow a lot and you read a lot, and I see you send me a lot of information. Just a couple of final words on the health. Is this like a regular flu, or this is a whole lot worse? What are your thoughts?
So you can go a lot of different ways on this. I believe that this thing is really a lot nastier than what we probably gave it credit for. We don't know exactly what happened and where. We know it did originate, according to the president, according to everyone else, from China and from Wuhan virus, what it's called, COVID-19. However, I'm not an expert on this. I can tell you some of the things I've read, and some people that are much smarter than me, including doctors, that have basically said that yes, this is similar to flu. You could categorize it that way, but the challenge is that it mutates and it aerolizes, so the droplets in your mouth can infect one person, and it has an exponential effect. What isn't 1-to-1 and you get sick and then that's good. But then these droplets, what happen is when you infect somebody, you infect this other person. So there's an exponential effect that could be potential of one person getting infected by it. Now in 30 days, you can infect 400 people. Now that's kind of the extreme, 1 to 400 in a 30-day period. If you can bend the curve and isolate and not be around as many people and whatnot, that might be one person infect 30 people or 100 people. But you still have a significant amount of what they call, it's called a slippery, and it has a big tail. These are the kind of medical terms that are being used, but slippery and a big tail. So it mutates and it changes and it goes up your nostrils and affects you not only in your top upper respiratory, but then it starts to actually affect your bottom respiratory. And what I've been reading about on that bottom respiratory part is that the reason that people are starting to die more and more, that you hear this, and typically people when they're older, 70 years and older, is because they liken it to the effect of breathing in fine particles of glass. And it starts to basically cut up your lungs, where you start filling up with fluids and whatnot. And you eventually just can't breathe. And if this was a weapon, and we're not going to go down this rabbit trail, but let's say this was a weapon, I can promise you that I wouldn't want to release a weapon to make it seem like it's a big monster. I'd want to release a weapon to seem like it's just a little old flu. I'd want to release a weapon to make it seem almost like a Trojan horse, if you really want to go back in history. And so I think there'll be a lot to be known over the next months and years of what happened. Why did we get this in our country, and the purpose that it was designed for, how it was created. I have certainly my thoughts about that, as I'm sure your listeners do. But you have to pay attention to the impact, not just from the humanity side, which is very important, but you have to pay attention to what the impact that happens from people that go to the hospital and they don't have respirators, or they don't have the proper equipment to be taking care of patients. And now the hospitals potentially get overrun, Mike. And already in Seattle right now, we're seeing the hospitals not be able to handle more people, and they're having these set up tents in the parking lot. And we haven't taken a lot of tests right now, but we're starting to see in New York just recently took over more as we speak right now. On March 20th, New York has had more cases than Seattle has, because we're starting to see the jump go up, and we're starting to track, just like Italy and some of these other countries, that this curve starts to happen if we don't isolate. And the reason that the government is starting to pay more attention on this is because they realize isolate ourselves for a 2-week period or so, then it cuts down significantly on our ability to be able to go and spread this. The millennials, I was watching on the news, they were out on the beaches in Florida having a good time partying, and they even are just, think about when you were 19 and 20 and, you don't care about anything, you care about partying, right? And so because they're irresponsible, they don't care. They're going to drink and do whatever they want and get around people and have a good time. They don't take it very serious. And I think that that's a huge mistake. And over the next couple of weeks, months, we're going to really start to see just how much impact that comes from if we don't take this thing serious.
Cory, thank you for your thoughts. I agree that the only solution at this point is this extreme shelter in place, very, very aggressive on all fronts, on all states. I mean, it's a federalist system, so all the governors have the power in individual states. And I'm actually happy to hear that these orders are coming in.
I just saw that Illinois just put their shelter and just
New York, California, and we need almost all states to do this. And certainly the young generation, millennials, will have to understand that there has to be ramifications for them not to stay where they are. But the orders are correct, and it needs to be. It's probably going to be way longer than a couple of weeks. My guess is it's got to be probably a couple of months. Not only it'll slow things down, but it will significantly improve the situation. It's almost like if you don't take the pill now, it's going to be a whole lot worse later. So you've got to take the pill and feel the pain, and it's the solution is that social distancing and shelter in place. So yeah, we live in a very difficult times. A lot of people, unfortunately, will be hurt and will perish as a result. And the economy has been put in a massive recession and possibly depression. But we'll make it through. I want us to finish with a message of hope and message of leadership. We have to all lead. We have to, as you said, mindset has to be positive. We have to persevere through this. We will come out better and stronger. We'll learn our lessons. We'll know how to deal with another pandemic like this. And this is a time of unity too. We need to forego all our political differences and stop political bickering and focus on health of the nation and health of the world. So any final thoughts?
I think that really wraps it up, Mike, that it's a humanity issue first, and then it certainly affects our businesses and our pocketbooks, all these things, but it's a humanity issue first. And if you can do your part and doing the right thing here and making sure that you're using sanitizer, cleaning your hands, taking this very serious, then that will help tremendously. I think for fear, if you feed fear, it grows. So I liken fear often to a balloon. The more that you blow up that balloon, the bigger it gets. And, it can get huge, but just as easy to grab that little balloon that you're blowing on and grabbing it like this and letting the air out. And the more you let that air out is just you relaxing, you really getting calm, you thinking critically for yourself. And pretty soon that big balloon that you couldn't even see in front of, because it just becomes nothing. It becomes almost putty in your hands. And it isn't because the issue has actually gotten bigger. It's because what you called the issue, what you made the issue, which often we do, and I'll tell you, I do it too. We make it bigger than what it is. Right. It's because our minds, we just get affected. So be really cognizant of critical thinking in your mindset right now. Protect this thing right here. That makes all the difference in the world.
Cory, it makes a lot of sense. I greatly appreciate this. I have to finish on a positive note with a laugh, with a joke or something, because
let's do it.
It's a little bit depressing, but we certainly need to have fun.
Let's do it.
I ask my kids, have you, did you wash your cans? And it's like, yes. Did you wash it for 20 seconds or 30 seconds? Like, yes, I did. And then I ask them, what about the feet? Like, I don't need my feet. I don't have to wash my feet. All right, go wash your hands again. for both, for feet and the hands. Do it together in one transaction. So
I got a good joke. That's pretty funny. So my wife sent me a meme. There's really funny memes. This meme was 2 socks, and these other socks were behind him. They have little faces on them with eyes on the socks, and the other socks are behind him. And he looks one. Well, the meme has a little word bubble, and it says, "We got to stick together, or we're going to end up like toilet paper."
This is crazy. You know what it is? There's been so many jokes about toilet paper. One more, we're done. So I remember I grew up in the former Soviet Union years ago, and from Russia with love. But long story short, when you run out of toilet paper, there's a solution, and it was used many years ago, back when we didn't have toilet paper. So it's the newspaper. It works. You take a newspaper, you cut it up, you basically crumble it with your hands, and you can use it. Worst case scenario, no toilet paper. There's a lot of newspaper, and a lot of the stuff that you read in the newspapers, it's so not true that it's perfect to, excuse me, take care of the business. So.
Take care of your business in the newspaper. I like it.
All right, Cory. Thank you again. Appreciate you coming on the podcast. Stay safe. Stay well.
You too. You and your family. I appreciate you, Mike.
Thank you kindly, and until the next time.
Sounds good. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Big Mike Fund Podcast. To receive your copy of Mike's How to Choose a Smart Real Estate Fund book, head to BigMikeFund.com or visit Amazon and type Mike Zlotnick. Keep listening and keep investing Big Mike style. See you on the next episode.